Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of the Seth MacFarlane series, The Orville, entitled About a Girl. And, this was really a conflicting episode for me. Carrying over some of the qualms I had, most certainly with the more contemporary humor and things like that. The whole three amigos on the holodeck and ending in a dance-off with Cyndi Lauper playing and whatever like that really didn't do much for me. The sort of goop monster hitting on the doctor toward the beginning of the episode, and oh, I got more where this came from, give me a mild chuckle. The comedy, they're still, at least to me, finding their footing as far as the comedy goes. But that was really largely it for the comedy for the most part, because the sort of focus on the episode, the crux of it, was very much the aftermath of Bortus's having a child born female, where the entire rest of his species are male. And I had speciously speculated that maybe this would touch upon sort of an allegory stemming off of the idea of, euthanasia, abortion. Even though this is a child that's born already, they might want to put it to death, that kind of thing. It hadn't occurred to me that there might be a surgical resolution, in a sense, sex change operation, and then it would sort of skirt closer to the ideas of female empowerment, feminism, female equality, gender equality, transgender, and the right to choose who and what you are and as an individual and such like that, which I'm all for, by the way. I agree with that sentiment, but at the same time, this episode kind of pissed me off, because we're not dealing with humanity. We're dealing with an alien species, an alien culture. Be they included in the Union or not. Being Bortus as a member, a rank and file member of that Union, serving on a space vessel and everything like that, doesn't really matter. I've watched too much Star Trek to be familiar with the Prime Directive, the non-interference directive. And while there is no such thing, so far as we know, in this series, they haven't spoke of anything of that sort. It really kind of like, who are we to play God? Who are we to come in as the self-righteous human beings and, apply the way we see things and value things on an alien culture that has been around for hundreds of thousands of years? Who are we to go in and say, you're doing it wrong? No. I don't like that. I don't agree with that. It took me back to, I was heavily reminded of an episode of Star Trek Enterprise, where the NX-01 Enterprise receives a hail, or they find like a spacefaring vessel that's on its last legs, and the people, it's very low technology, nothing quite as far leaps and bounds as warp ships and everything like the Federation has or Starfleet has in the time period that Star Trek Enterprise takes place in. But so this planet they go to seeking medical aid is representative of two sort of species. The main sort of overarching species are very much like humanity. They're technology based. They have skyscrapers, computers, very advanced medical knowledge and such like that. Not nearly as advanced as humanity and some of the other cultures, Vulcans and everything, that make up, the burgeoning Federation, if you will. But there's that species, and then there's sort of a subset who are much more backward, non-technological based, technology based, very much still using, plants and things in the way they create medicines and healing things and whatever like that, and going out on hunts and living off nature, and it's kind of backward to the technological, more superior species on the planet out of these two species. But it turns out the more advanced species has contracted a disease at a genetic level that threatens to basically make that whole species extinct, and it would leave behind the less advanced And so, of course, being a very sort of compassionate human being and finding this more technologically advanced species, sort of cut from the same cloth as humanity, the captain of the Enterprise, Captain Jonathan Archer, orders his alien doctor, a Denobulan by the name of Dr. Phlox, to seek and find a cure to help these people. But then, 3/4 of the way, maybe halfway into the episode, Phlox reveals that he's already found a cure, but he doesn't know that it's ethical to apply it. Because this genetic malady is actually something that's naturally occurring. Humanity, any alien species, should not really be going in and playing God with the lives of a species that should probably phase out. It would be like, I think he uses the analogy, like, what if alien spacefaring, travelers had come back to Earth before the dinosaurs were going to be wiped out, and they stopped that. And then humanity would never have become the predominant species on Earth, and whatever like that, or Neanderthals. What if they weren't given they were given the advantage, and Homo sapiens were not? Our planet would look very vastly different. And so all of those moral quandaries and dilemmas was what was very sort of in mind as I'm watching this show. As I say, I understand it's a different scenario. From a very human, in the here and now perspective, no, this child should not have that decision made for her. But taking a step back, looking at it objectively, looking at the framework of what this show is. This is an alien culture. This is a culture that has survived this way for countless hundreds of thousands of years, for all we know. We don't exactly know how long they've been around, but this is their way. This is the way they are. What right do we have to go and push forth our idea? Now, I kind of felt like it was a bit of a cop-out that all of a sudden, they do a scan, and I thought they were going to find, there are actually hundreds of thousands of hidden female Mochlins all over this planet and whatever, and that would have been quite significant. But no, they only find one, and she happens to be the poet, the writer that all of the society knows and is familiar with and holds in such high regard. And it kind of felt like it was reaching to me, like, well, at that point in the story, maybe the writers had the same idea I had, that, like, the prime directive, the non-interference directive, what right do we have? Well, we can eschew that if, hey, look, there actually is a woman on the planet, though. And should we put her to death? Should we shun her? Should, all these things? It felt like a last stage cop-out to, try to make the point. I guess the only sort of acclaim I can give the way the story played out is the ending, where it was all for naught. And what it basically amounts to is humanity being the best representatives of the compassion they can try to be. The commander being the sort of advocate for Bortus's child and whatever like that. And, Alara trying to, as persuaded, I guess, by both the captain and the commander, to try to convince Bortus that, women can be strong, that it's not an impediment, as his species would have it, as they understand it, to be a woman, to be female. And all of those things, I guess I can take away that at least humanity, this far-flung future humanity, has the right point of view, but that should be restrained to how we conduct ourselves, within our own culture. We should not be applying those things to alien cultures. I mean, if we were actually cooperative and aware of alien cultures, would we want them coming and telling us that the way we conduct ourselves, the way we live, would we give them any credence, any, allowance to come in and tell us, dictate to us how we ought to live. Like, oh, well, look at how much of humanity is kind of cancerous to the earth, how much natural resources have been depleted, how much global warming is having an impact, and all these things. And very much like Agent Smith from The Matrix, putting forth the idea that we are a virus to this planet, this living planet, because we're eating it away, we're killing it, and we need to think better of that. What if an alien species sees that and says, okay, well, 1/3 of the population should be put to death to stop that from happening, to save and preserve the planet? How many people out there, raise your hands, not that I can see it because this is pre-recorded video, how many people out there would be accepting of that? Probably none. probably a very, infinitesimal amount would actually sign up for the documents and walk into the executioner's block for the simple fact that an alien species came and said, well, as far as we're concerned, you're not living correctly. You're not taking care of your planet correctly, and this is how you ought to do it. That's kind of what we're doing here in this story. We're taking an alien infant, an entire alien culture, and we're putting, we're projecting our own sensibilities upon it. And these are sensibilities, by the way, that are not even as evolved as they're portrayed in the show in our real world. I can only hope that one day it is, the idea of racism and discrimination for differences in gender or background or skin color or whatever, all of these things, that mentality can be abolished. I can only hope, fingers crossed, but that's not really what this story was about. It's kind of irrelevant because we're dealing with an alien culture. And I don't know. I kind of feel disappointed that the human beings didn't ever stop to say, do we have the right to really interfere like this? I mean, the captain kind of did. There was a brief moment where they're in, like the communal area, and he and the commander are having drinks. And he's kind of thinking like that a little bit, but they put the cap on that so quickly that it doesn't linger. It doesn't stick out, that there could be any qualms with interference, with trying to implore this species who's done this for however many hundreds of years or thousands of years or millions of years, to suddenly one day find a child and be like, well, this is the way you should forever live. Change your ways because human beings said so. I don't know. I guess another sort of silver lining that might come out of this is that debate, is that discussion. I'm sure many people will have watched this and felt empowered and felt like, damn right, human beings for the win. This is the way we ought to be. We ought to be all-inclusive. We ought to be accepting to each other's differences, as Star Trek would have it. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Celebrate that. But number one, though this may be a parody, it isn't Star Trek. They haven't said anything about the non-interference directive, which really is irksome to me because, if this society is supposed to be so advanced, if we're going to take it seriously at all, the topic, it's like they were trying to really genuinely, dole this topic out in a serious fashion. If we're going to take it as seriously as they want us to, there's a lot that has to be discussed about how we would conduct ourselves. It's not like just looking at another country across the pond where other human beings are. They're just like us. There are many differences, but they're all the same at the same time. It's not like dealing with another country that's just sort of backwards to the way our own country considers itself. These are aliens. These are other beings from another world, another planet out there somewhere. And what right do we have? At the end of the day, that's what I was left with. What right do we have to impose, to project our sensibilities on them? And I'm kind of glad in a sense that it didn't work, that it failed, because we don't have that right. If we're dealing with our own species, you think of, there are places in the world that put those who are homosexual to death. There are places in the world that, mutilate genitalia, female genitalia. These are disgusting, abhorrent things. These are things we need to stop. We need to evolve beyond. But you can't apply that to an alien culture, even if it is fiction, even if it is allegorical. That's the overhanging qualm and issue I had with this episode. And that's really all I have to say on it. I'll just be repeating myself, stuttering all the way through it, this long-winded discussion. I'd just like to hear from you guys in the comments below, whether you agree with me, whether you see my point of view, whether you completely disagree with it and think, yeah, female empowerment, transgender equality, and whatever like that. You took it at face value and didn't think any deeper than that, or what have you. Whatever your thoughts happen to be, our POVs can certainly disagree. I just love having that conversation. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.